Welcome to another episode of the dumbest one in the room, where I ask the dumb questions so you don't have to. So we've learned about Bitcoin in the last episode, and now we're going to go in learning about Ethereum, which came along after Bitcoin. It was the second big coin to come about, and we have Ted here to help us learn about Ethereum. Welcome to the show, Ted.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate you having me on. I wouldn't consider myself an Ethereum expert, but I reckon I can, talk about it for a little bit. I come from SwiftX, so head of content. So obviously we cover a lot of topics, and Ethereum's one of those. So hopefully I can answer your questions to the best of my ability.
And we might even, in the comments below, might even put a link to your tapping into crypto. You do a lot of podcasting and educational stuff on that as well, thanks to SwiftX. So I'll link that in the comments.
Yeah, much appreciated. We'll take every listener we can.
So basically, Bitcoin started it all, right? Initially, that's all there was. So why did Ethereum come about? What did we need that Bitcoin didn't offer?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a matter of Bitcoin not offering something or Bitcoin failing. Like Bitcoin does something really well, and that's transacting and storing value. Like it was made for that reason, and it's stuck to its guns. It hasn't really changed that whole, bottom line since its inception, right? So I think Ethereum came along 5, 6 years after Ethereum was invented, not because, as I said, Bitcoin was failing or doing a poor job, but because the founders of Ethereum saw an opportunity with the technology that Bitcoin utilized, which is blockchain, and said, yep, Bitcoin's doing a great job, but we can utilize this blockchain technology for a lot more, broaden the horizons of this technology. And essentially that's how Ethereum was born. So it's, you do have the ETH token, which can be used similar to Bitcoin to transact and store value, but ultimately the Ethereum platform does a lot more than that. It's a platform allowing, people to build applications and offer online services, which are a little bit different to, say, the applications or online services you get or you use on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So you said that Ethereum came about to expand the industry or the offerings. So what was the biggest thing that Ethereum brought to the game?
Well, I think the main point of difference for Ethereum was smart contracts. Now, smart contracts are very similar to, a traditional contract in, that you've got two parties. It's an agreement between two or more parties, right? The only difference is with smart contracts is you don't have the intermediaries. Typically with traditional contracts, you've got at least a lawyer and or a bank involved and maybe some other stakeholders, whereas smart contracts eliminates those. So you've got the two or more parties, but these contracts execute based on a number of conditions. And once those conditions are met, they execute similar to a normal contract would be executed, but just taking out, I guess, that human intervention. So makes it a little bit quicker and it opens up the horizons to do a bunch of things. So with Ethereum, as I said before, it allows developers or whoever wants to build these applications to build them themselves through the use of smart contracts. So, I mean, like I always use an analogy to explain smart contracts is, let's say, Jason, do you have a favorite sports team? You live in Adelaide. Do you watch the AFL?
Yep, 100%,
Okay.
mate. Go Crows.
Yeah, I assumed it would be the Crows. So I'm a Lions fan. But let's say we wanted to put a wager on a Crows-Lions game, right? And we both were putting $10 in, winner takes all. So if we wanted to do this through a smart contract, you could deposit $10, I could deposit $10, and these smart contracts that get the information and the real-world data from I'm forgetting the name. What is Chainlink?
Oracle.
What do they call that? Oracle, an Oracle network. Yes, thank you for that. So they get, Chainlink's probably the most well-known one. They get the information from an Oracle like Chainlink, and in this case, it's probably going to be the result of the game. The result of the game, the Crows win, and all of a sudden, the smart contract executes. It delivers you the $20, and it's a very simple example of how that could operate. I think it's not the most common example. The most common example is probably to do with DeFi and decentralized finance, which is a little bit more complicated, but it essentially is allowing different applications to run. In the case of DeFi, it's more on the fact of like online trading and matching up buyers and sellers. But yeah, there's a million different possibilities that can be used through the use of smart contracts.
So I guess one of the biggest benefits of a smart contract is you don't need to trust anyone. You don't need to trust the opposing party, any middlemen, anything like that, because that smart contract doesn't matter. It will activate and deliver what it's designed to do, and you don't need to trust each other. Is that the whole purpose of it?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think that's sort of a fundamental of, this industry as a whole is it's decentralized, but this is taken to a whole nother level. And I guess the benefit of that is, as I said before, it's removing the need for human intervention. And that might sound scary, but it's the way we're going as a world anyway. Like, we live in this increasingly digital world. Everything's becoming faster, more convenient, quicker. And smart contract is one of those things that is able to facilitate that, whether it be trading online at 24/7 with people around the world. Like, that's opening up new possibilities for that. And then there's a million different things that can be done on Ethereum, like applications from social media to marketplaces to, there's a lot of things. I'm forgetting a few of them right now, but pretty much all facilitated through smart contracts.
Yeah. And the advantage is it can't be changed. Again, that trust is out of it, can't be changed. Those parameters are met, it activates. So that's phenomenal. You also mentioned like DeFi usages. Now, we hear a lot about DeFi, decentralized finance, and we're going to touch on DEXs and all them in a later episode. But DeFi, where does it come from? What does it do? What is the main purpose of DeFi?
Yeah. Okay. So in simple terms, DeFi is a short name for decentralized finance. So if you think of traditional finance, in the world we live in, whether it be banking, borrowing and lending, earning a interest or yield on, your savings, it's similar to that, but it's bringing it on chain, and it removes a lot of those intermediaries or central authorities like banks by automating a lot of these processes. So one big example of DeFi is being able to borrow, because obviously, it's borrowing such a big thing in the world of finance. You can do this on chain through a platform like Aave, which is built on top of Ethereum. And this essentially allows you to borrow funds by putting forward, it could be your Ethereum, could be a stable coin like USDT. And essentially you're able to borrow against that Ethereum, whereby it's used as security, whereby if you can't, pay down that loan, that might be, it might be taken off you, similar to how you put up a car or a house in traditional finance. So yeah, a lot of that is facilitated through the use of smart contracts, but Ethereum is essentially the base layer, or it's an ecosystem where everything is built on top of. So, I like to think of Ethereum as a city, and, all the different businesses and brick and mortar buildings is built within this city. And then the ETH token, ETH, is basically the currency that funds that city and people transact in. So people can build other tokens through the ETH ecosystem, but the main one and the base one is typically that ETH token.
I've also heard a lot about NFTs, and I believe they started on Ethereum. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people would have heard about NFTs, like, they probably think of the Bored Ape Yacht Club, pictures of apes, NFTs, which is the most classic example. And yeah, I think probably the earliest example of a traditional NFT that we know today started on Ethereum, and they really blew up in around 2021. I think people probably have a bit of a sour taste when it comes to NFTs, and maybe, they become a bit of a joke. But the important thing to remember about NFTs is they're not just pictures of, art or monkeys. It's the technology behind them. So an NFT is a unique digital asset or collectible. It could be anything from an in-game item to art to a song. And then you've got other, uses of NFTs where it could be used to verify digital ownership. So it could be a concert ticket, and they do that in order to remove counterfeiting, or it could be used to verify, luxury items like a watch or a car or, a Gucci item. So I don't think we've seen the full potential of NFTs yet, but yes, like you said, Ethereum was sort of the foundational layer for NFTs to take off, and we've seen them expand to other layer one networks like Solana and so forth. But Ethereum was the initial sort of chain that NFTs thrived.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm actually going to deep dive on NFTs in a later episode, because there's so much to unpack there. But let's move on with Ethereum. So we've explained what it can do, what it's for, but what's its weaknesses? Surely there's got to be some drawbacks with Ethereum.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good segue from the NFT point, because I think a lot of people, if they've been in crypto for some time now, will remember back to the time in 2021 where crypto was just exploding, NFTs were going crazy, and to transact on Ethereum, on the Ethereum chain or network, was just insanely expensive. Like, I think there's stories of people accidentally paying like $50,000 in a fee just to transfer a small amount of money, which was kind of crazy. And even I paid, sometimes like $50 just to, trade on the Ethereum network. So it was a crazy time, and people were addressing this issue and saying like Ethereum will never be able to survive if this is the case. Like, if you think about it, it's kind of similar to, we'll use the city example again, where if you've got a city and the traffic is really bad, that's obviously not a good, attribute to the city, right? So you've got to fix it. It's similar to Ethereum. Like, these fees got so high when traffic was like very high, like in times of really high usage. And so ultimately, like, the network prioritized people who were paying higher fees in order to have that transaction prioritized. Since then, they've made a lot of upgrades. Like, that was 5 years ago. They've made a lot of upgrades. They moved consensus mechanism, which we're not going to get into because it's probably a bit too technical. But ultimately, they've addressed this issue. And I was even looking today, like, transactions on the Ethereum blockchain have hit an all-time high this year, which is pretty surprising. But the median transaction fee is like next to nothing. So it looks like they have addressed this issue, but when you look a little bit deeper into it, they've actually been able to do this through the use of layer twos, which is, when you think of Ethereum as a layer one, you've then got a layer two network on it in order for Ethereum to be able to scale. So these sit on top of the Ethereum network as essentially a scaling layer so that you can transact quicker, cheaper. But ultimately, I think Ethereum could have addressed the issue with its layer one issue. I think their founder came out recently and said we might not need not verbatim, but just sort of paraphrasing his words, saying like, the whole roll-up layer two scaling solution that they propose, where you have layer twos, might not be necessary anymore. But ultimately, that's what's been able to make it more affordable and improve scaling thus far. Whether that changes down the line, I'm not sure. I personally have, transacted and played around with some layer twos, and the user experience is not the friendliest. Now, that was a couple of years ago, so it might have improved since then. But yeah, ultimately, it'd be pretty interesting to see how they address that in the future, because ETH is known for, all these technical upgrades in order to improve the experience of both the users and the builders on the Ethereum network. So yeah, it's good to see that they're addressing those issues and seem to have been successful along the way.
I remember my early days. I was a big Polygon fan. So yeah, layer two for Ethereum, cheap gas, easy to use. Again, with ETH gas coming down and becoming quite manageable, Polygon's pretty much dead now. So it's a shame, but if they're not needed, they're not needed. So when you say a layer two helps the ETH layer one scale and cheaper fees, how does it do that?
How does it help the fees and the scalability? Is that what you asked?
Yeah. What's the process of how a layer two interacts with the layer one?
Technically, I wouldn't be able to explain it to you, but I break it down in my mind to, you're basically breaking up some of the traffic that's, is used on Ethereum. So a lot of people use the Ethereum network for some of those applications that I talked about before. You're essentially just diverting some of that traffic to these layer twos. Like, there's multiple well-known ones, whether they be Arbitrum or Optimism, are two of the biggest ones. And as you said, Polygon, a few years ago. Essentially, these layer twos are leveraging the security framework of Ethereum, because Ethereum is a super secure, robust network, but then they've got their own technology to allow for fast, quick, and cheap transactions. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting the security of Ethereum, and you're getting the fast scalability of some of these layer twos like Arbitrum and Optimism. But as I said before, like, we're hearing stories now that Ethereum might be able to address and deliver both.
Yeah, very, very good. So do you think Ethereum or the crypto industry, but Ethereum specifically, do you think it's trying to replace traditional finance, banks and all that sort of thing?
I think, what do I think about that? But like, not really. I do think it's just sort of, an extension of, the digital world we live in. Like, everyone's trying to, as consumers, we always want quicker, faster, cheaper things. And Ethereum is providing that through an alternative technology, right? They're a long way from replacing traditional finance, but we are seeing the convergence of traditional finance and decentralized finance, or or the crypto industry, we're seeing them starting to merge. Now, what the Ethereum team's thoughts are on, taking over and replacing the traditional financial system, I don't know. I know that their whole thing was to sort of redefine how we interact with applications, how we build applications, how we transact with each other, whether it be me to you or overseas. But ultimately, I can't see them really shaking up the traditional financial system without the help of the TradFi guys in itself. Like, I think you need adoption from the TradFi guys who are then going to say, okay, this technology is actually, it's quicker, it's more effective than the stuff we're using. So we're going to start integrating into our stuff. I don't think it's going to be a complete takeover of the Ethereum or the layer one and the crypto networks, overtaking. I think it's going to be a mix of both.
100%. And we are seeing that already in very increasing degrees. So it's going to be an interesting future. I suppose in a bit of closing here, if someone believes in Bitcoin, and I'm not bagging Bitcoin maxis here because they are usually great people, but if they only believe in Bitcoin and won't touch other coins like Ethereum, do you think they're missing out, or are we wrong?
From an investment standpoint, I personally view it as diversification. Like, I'd like to, keep my portfolio pretty trim, but I include Bitcoin and Ethereum, both Bitcoin and Ethereum in there. And I do that from the perspective of, as I said before, Bitcoin does what Bitcoin does best, and that is storing and transacting value. It's an alternative to fiat currencies. ETH is not the same. And I think, newbies into the space might not understand that. They might just see ETH as sort of a shinier Bitcoin, but ETH is completely different. And so is, the likes of Solana and so forth. But ultimately, Ethereum is building sort of a network or ecosystem of applications and allowing people to come and build their own applications and online services for people to use, right? Which is different from Bitcoin's use of just, creating a decentralized money. So I think I look at them as like two different softwares, right? One is resolving this issue, another is resolving this issue. There's space for both of them. I think they're both going to succeed, particularly now. Bitcoin's been the king since the inception of crypto, ETH since about 2015, and they've held those top two spots. And I think it's going to be hard to replace ETH. I know you're a big Solana guy, but ultimately you can't go past like ETH's experience, its reputation, and also its robust security network. And oftentimes people say, nah, Solana's better, or whatever network is better because it's quicker and cheaper and there's more memes launching on this network. But ultimately, I think ETH has done a good job to address the issues. And now we're seeing a more sort of user-friendly experience across the board. So I think, they've sort of stood the test of time, because there was, a long time ago, people were saying that ETH will be replaced or overtaken by the next best thing. But it's done a good job. To sort of circle back and summarize, I think there's room for both. And I think they're completely different and both do their respective roles quite well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, for the purpose of this podcast, I'm very unbiased. And the only reason I steered away from ETH was the high gas fees, which is no longer a problem. So, maybe it's time I go and have another play with Ethereum.
Well,
so I guess
you're not the only one. Oh, sorry.
No, you're right. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you're definitely not the only one. I think a lot of people have a bit of PTSD from, 21, 22 using Ethereum and like haven't really gone back since. But just looking into some of the data and, some of these, like the median fees and the amount of traffic it's going, it seems to have addressed those issues pretty well.
Yeah. So just the last question here, I suppose, to wrap up everything we've said. If I'm about to explain Ethereum to my grandma, right, what's one sentence that you think wraps it up and explains it as best you can?
That's tough. Ethereum is like your phone, where you can use apps on a daily basis, but it's looking to do it cheaper, quicker, and more decentralized. I don't know if your grandma's going to enjoy that last one, but
I love it. That's perfect. So, I really appreciate you coming on, Ted, and we will be definitely catching up again at Oz CryptoCon, I dare say, later in the year. And thank you very much. Everyone, go say hi to Ted, watch Tapping Into Crypto, and obviously go see him at Oz CryptoCon in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on, Jason. Look forward to having a beer with you at Oz CryptoCon.
Done. See you, mate.
Yeah.